Welcome back for another episode of Empty World. Today's episode is going to be Empty World Abandoned Places Across the Country. I am here with my co host, Ty. Of course, myself, Mason. Ty, how are you doing today?
Man, I'm doing good. I had a productive morning, and I'm excited for our topic today. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep, myself as well. Especially considering all the abandoned places throughout America, throughout the country, as things continue to be abandoned with this world economy and other things that are going on. But before I start sharing some pictures and we start going into these topics, kind of going over some of these abandoned places and things that we're seeing throughout the world and kind of some things that are going on now. Um, as we're in today's world, the economy, the fall of retail, um, we're consistently seeing a increase of abandoned places such as malls, shopping centers, big box stores that were all by themselves. Whether it be like closing Walmarts, Best Buys, Macy's, um, all these buildings that were very prominent earlier in our childhood, or if you grew up in the 70s or 80s when they were booming to their biggest degree. And as things like resorts are starting to close and they become ghost towns. That's kind of going to be the center of today's episode. And it's really interesting to see, as time goes on, just driving down the street, seeing, a shopping center that, looks brand new, but half the places are closed and empty, abandoned, if you will. So that's going to kind of be today's topic. And we'll go from some modern to some things back in the 70s. And I think it's going to be a great episode to kind of like delve deep into. I'm really excited to kind of show off some of those things, and we'll be as descriptive as possible for those people that are just listening in. But I'm excited to get started. What are some things that come to mind when you think of abandoned places, Ty?
I've got an anecdote. All right, so I remember as a kid, I had a family member who would always give me gift cards to Dillard's of all stores,
Oh
right? So I'm
yeah,
like
Dillard's. Yeah,
a
yeah.
12-year-old kid getting a $25 gift card to Dillard's for my birthday,
Half
and
a
then a
T-shirt.
$25, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
and then a $25 gift card for Christmas. And my birthday's a week away from Christmas, so I'd get those together, get $50. And gosh, what do you buy when you're 12 at Dillard's? But I remember I bought this cologne called Simply Irresistible by Givenchy, and I still have the bottle. I still have just a little bit of it left, and I use it very sparingly because it's my favorite cologne. I've had it for what 20 years now, right? I bust it out for special occasions. You could still buy it online, but you're buying it like from some guy who bought 10 of them and is selling them on eBay for hundreds of dollars.
Oh
But
God.
oh my gosh, but dude, Dillard's, what a relic.
Yeah, what and I already know the answer, but if your kids get a gift card, if you get a gift card now, there's only one place that you typically get a gift card for, and where is it?
Oh my gosh, dude, they got to have them Robux, bro.
Oh, okay, yeah, my kids are Roblox too. So uh I always see it's either, I guess it's for kids, it's Roblox. For me it's always an Amazon gift card.
Yeah, Amazon's huge too, for
I never
sure.
get others, or maybe a Visa, right? Like you can spend anywhere, or you're supposed to be able to spend anywhere, but you don't get
Yep.
them to the stores anymore. And geez,
But
yeah,
that's
but
better than the ones that are terrible, I feel like, are the ones that are like those combination restaurants, It's like you can use this at Applebee's, Chili's, or whatever, like I feel like it's always like if you could just think of the your four least favorite restaurants, that's what the gift card's for.
well, they're getting worse and worse because they're trying to save money.
Exactly.
Um, so yeah, our first topic today, I think this is big because it was big when I was younger. It's kind of a relic. If they're still there, they're very empty. Um, and they used to be big in the 80s when they first popped up. For the first abandoned place that I really wanted to cover is malls of America, not the Mall of America, I think they're still doing good, but malls across America. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys. For your listeners, we'll be as descriptive as possible. These pictures are from a photographer called Seth Lawless. You can visit his website at sethlawless.com. He typically visits abandoned places and takes pictures and kind of takes pictures of relics throughout history. But first, we're starting with kind of like the malls and how broken down they are now and what they look like. Um, so just kind of looking at the first picture that we have here, you kind of like you see the escalators, you see like dim lights, you see like walls that are falling down, probably asbestos. Um, you see escalators that are like torn up and aren't there anymore. And you kind of like look back in the 90s when you first like saw a mall and how popular they were and how many stores like Macy's, Dillard's, Hot Topic, Pacific Sun, Abercrombie. I don't know if they're still around since the mall closed. But you think of all these places that you grew up with as a child that have over time just closed. Malls are empty. Macy's is pulled out. We Ty mentioned Dillard's. Dillard's is gone. J.C. Penney. Oh God, thing of the past. Like all these big companies pull out of the mall, and then things around them. Radio Shack closed down. They were big in the malls. Like all these Spencers, Gags and Gifts was pretty big, gone. Right. So we're kind of like looking at those things and we're looking at the malls of today. You just see how empty they are. Like Ty, do you really have any memories of going to the mall when you were younger and what it was like for you and your experience?
You know, I do to an extent. I feel like there's definitely like that subset of people in our generation that were the mall kids, right? They describe like, oh man, hanging out at every Friday at the mall with the friends and just doing hood rat stuff. That wasn't exactly my experience. I wasn't necessarily a mall kid, but I do remember a distinct time in my life when the mall was a pretty common destination, and we were never there to buy anything, right? We weren't there to pick out new outfits or anything. We were just there to, I guess, just pass the time as kids, right? Um, it's uh, it's interesting. I also have a very distinct memory of my dad taking me to, gosh, I guess it was probably Fiesta Mall, right? The mall that
Yeah,
now
yeah.
that does is Fiesta's gone, right?
Fiesta is officially closed.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so we've got an abandoned mall in our area that I remember going to as a kid. He would hit the elevator or the handicap button to automatically open the door, right? And then say the magic words and make it open. And I must have been 5 or 6, and I just thought my dad was a magician, right? Opening this door with his mind. And I think it wasn't until years later I was back at the mall and I was like, you know what? He was pressing this button. That's what he was doing.
Yeah, specifically when I was younger, I think it was high school. Um, Freshman year. I think as we grew up, we matured a little bit more. But freshman year, the place to go, right, when you skip school, was the mall, and the reason being is because back then we lived in more of a world where you could have stay-at-home parents. Um, Not really so much anymore, but so back then it's like you couldn't just go home and go back to bed, right? So we would go to the mall and just hang around the mall. We weren't necessarily shopping, but we'd go to some of those places that were bigger when we were younger, like Pacific Sun, Hot Topic, Spencer's, to just hang out, right? And like it was funny, like even when I matured and I had like a job where I had to go to across the state, and I had stores that were inside the mall. Fiesta was a good example because there was a storm Fiesta. Um, but like when you went there, it's funny, especially in Arizona because it's so hot. You had what you would call, or I would call, mall walkers. They would get there when the mall first opened, and sometimes before stores even opened. and they used to use it to exercise, to walk around the mall, right? And it was there because it was cool, right? Nobody cared if you really walked around. There's places you can get water and fill up on water. It was just more like a quiet place. I mean, I guess it wasn't healthy. You're not getting sun, vitamin D, or whatever you get from the sun, but people used it as a walking place. They used to have pet stores, but it probably came from puppy farms. But they had pet stores there, and people would come just to go to the pet stores, or they leave their kids at the pet stores while they were shopping. Um, so I used to be there all the time, and I hate to classify this as what was when I was younger, but I was a skater kid, and when you're a skater kid, like PacSuns, Hot Topic, Spencer's, they had a lot of like the clothing, the shoes, the things that you were really looking for. Where now you can really only find them online. You really can't find them anywhere else. Um, but now, like Fiesta Mall, for example, like I remember going there for store visits, and like I felt like every time I went in there, another store was closed. You went to the food court, there was like two places left open. Um, there was a what I would call a gas station inside the mall that was it was a gas station without the pumps, and they sold everything a gas station would sell, which was really odd for me growing up and knowing what was in the mall regularly. um, but yeah, Fiesta is a good example because like the pictures that I'm showing, and I'll show a couple more, um, you really see like these dirt covered, um, like walls are still up, gates are cracked up, the escalators, and you wonder why in your mind why these places are still around. And you think about the real estate of a mall and the two stories, the electrical, the plumbing for each store, everything that went into that mall in that big space. There really isn't much you can do or in budget to completely destroy a mall, repave over, and to create it into something new. Because first of all, what are you going to put there in that big of a real estate, right? And actually have stores there.
And
Um,
gosh, why would you? I mean, I know the listeners can't see it, but look at this beautiful, beautiful architecture, right? Like I feel like the iconic style of the 90s was created by malls, like you almost can't have that iconic retro 90s feel without picturing a mall in your mind, and it's so weird too to think like imagine describing these pictures to somebody who had never heard of what a mall was, right? It would not even remotely make sense. It'd be the craziest, most outlandish idea, right?
right, and is it, you look. I've only seen a few that were taken down, or in the process of being taken down. It's a very slow process. Um, and like here's another picture. Like all the chairs are still there. Like it looks like it should be open, but it's not. Um, like they have the fake tree still up. And in the '90s, like this would be packed. You go on a Black Friday, a mall would be packed. Um, and now they're just ghost towns, and some of them like people go to because they're creepy. They look haunted. People break into them a lot, and they're very hazardous. Like we look at some of these pictures of uh like this one right here. I'll pull this one up, where like you can see like the glass is caved in, so there's glass everywhere. Snow has gotten in there, so it's deteriorating. Like you can see the escalator that is busted up in midway where somebody could fall. And these are places that people break into because everybody's always interested to see. I don't know, like it's interesting to see an abandoned place and see something for what it once was.
I wonder how common too it is for people who, grew up going to these malls when they were still living, breathing organisms, you know, for them to want to go back and see it. I know, like, dude, I would pay money to go see Fiesta in a state like this, right? Because I remember being there. Also, I have a fun tidbit. I swear it's going to connect. Ernest Hemingway, famous author, right? He committed suicide. Do you know where he bought the shotgun that he used?
Was it in a mall?
It was
What?
Abercrombie and Fitch.
Oh my God.
They were originally a sporting goods store. I don't know that it was in a mall, but it was definitely an Abercrombie and Fitch shotgun.
Enigma video says I played this mall in Call of Duty.
Dude, absolutely.
I mean, there's so many, and they're across the country. Uh, You'd think each state, every metropolitan area, there's probably at least two. And there's very few still open, and they're usually the big ones like Mall of America, um, places like that, and they continue to deteriorate, and it's something that we're not going to see in the future. And hopefully, like places like this get torn down just for safety. I mean, it's really cool to see and maybe go in, but even for tourism sake, it's not safe, right?
Imagine
So
if they had converted these too, like to, I mean, right? He says Call of Duty. And I feel like I had heard talk at one point of Fiesta, or maybe I made it up, but imagine a giant airsoft arena or a giant paintball arena, right?
it's
Like,
funny that you mentioned that. I
be
don't know where it
crazy.
is. You can look it up on Google. Anybody watching or replaying this, there was an abandoned mall where they had a zombie experience. And I don't know if you've ever went to like a physical zombie experience where they have guns, they look real, they actually have kickback, so they feel like you're actually firing, but they fire lasers. And you go through the mall and you run through the mall trying to escape from the zombies, and they have um, these things around their neck. And when you shoot, it feels like you're shooting a real gun, but it shoots lasers. And when you hit them, and you can only do headshots, so that's why they're around their neck. They'll fall over and they'll play the part if they died. And your whole goal was to survive them all. I don't know how many people they let in. I know like the pop-up ones, it was like kind of like a haunted house, but they had a whole mall experience. I don't know if it's still going, but they repurposed it for that. But they kept it looking broken down, but just safer.
Dude, that sounds amazing. That would be so much fun.
So and you get fit while you're running around from them. I have done them before. Yeah, so that they're fun. They do them like once a year in Arizona, like come around Halloween. I'd check it out, Tyler. So much fun. You could do
So
like they had like a little Uzi you could use. They had like an M16 you can use. The pop-up ones only really last for like 15 minutes, like any haunted house, but they chase after you, and like they have boss zombies and you have to take more shots. You go in there with like two or three people, so you get like the jump scare mixed with like killing zombies. It's just a lot of fun.
dude, that sounds
But
tight.
I'd love to know if the mall's still going, and if you can take part of it. I know they had a video on YouTube where a guy was wearing a chest cam while he was doing it, and it looked like just a ton of fun. So I would definitely like to take part in that. But the pop-up ones are fun as well. But yeah, malls, thing of the past. Uh, God, I want to say I miss them, but yeah, it's all Amazon now, anyways. Shoes I buy off Amazon. Um, I other than groceries, I think about everything off Amazon. And I think it's terrible because I don't support retailers anymore. But I mean, it's just the reality of things nowadays.
It is. I mean, how can you not, right? Like, even when the malls didn't look like they do in these photos, other than just having all these stores next to each other, what was the real convenience, right? Like, you still had to park kind of far. You still had to do a lot of walking. And I know these are first world problems. Like, believe me, I know. But how can you not just sit on your couch and order your shelf stable almond milk in a package of 8 on Amazon and have it delivered 3 hours later? Like, which is, by the way, a purchase I make fairly often.
All right, so let's check out some more. So you can visit this website. It's called cnntraveler.com. They have a lot of things, but they also have some abandoned places around the world that are both eerie, creepy, or beautiful that you can still visit. They close down, etc. This is still something that's happening across the U.S., and this is just a small example, but um, one of the big booms we had, I guess you can say mall was one of them, but there was still to this day, I think they do it, but the gold boom, the gold rush, right? They used to have when they hit a pocket of gold, they would kind of like build these miniature or big, depending on the gold, cities around um, the gold rush, right? Like they'd build actual homes, cars, etc. They'd have like populations over 5,000, and then the second they run out of gold, with a snap of the finger, everybody just abandons their homes, their places, right? It's the same. It was the same thing, I think, for iron, copper, coal. I still think some of those places happen today. I think gold is more a big corporation, but back when it was just like the average person like shifting for gold in the river, or people in the mines, they had these cities built around them. And they're still up today. Most of them, like in this picture, is still up, and you could see homes in the background, homes up front, cars that were abandoned. Um, but I mean, I think I still think going throughout today, maybe not as big, but just think about back to, I don't know, like 30s, 40s, 50s, like how big of a thing this was.
It's huge. I know there's this YouTube channel that I watch. It's a gentleman who he's like a Silicon Valley tech guy, right? And he bought an abandoned town. He bought Cerro Gordo, I believe it's in California. It's just outside of Death Valley, and he is single-handedly restoring this town to its former glory and trying to open it up for tourism. If you get a chance, like Cerro Gordo, Ghost Town Living, I think is the name of the YouTube channel. Wonderful channel. He does such a good job of explaining the history, and it's so cool to see his personal transformation from this dude who really, I think he had to have been in over his head, right? Like his first drive up there, he got stuck in the snow halfway up, right? Like just purely just raw willpower. And now he's like rappelling into mines that have been abandoned for decades and like doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And the amount of growth for him has been really cool to watch. And then the changing and growth of the town, right? Like the idea that he can bring it back to something, right? Even if it's never what it was, which you kind of hinted at. But by the way, like unsafe working conditions, murders, violence, right? And I think that Cerro Gordo, I could be wrong, but I think it was late 1800s, early 1900s. He talks about murders and brothels and just all sorts of crazy debauchery, right? In this very much like Wild West town. It's really cool. I definitely recommend checking out that channel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think especially in these gold rush towns back then, you know, probably theft, gold theft, right? Like it's worth so much. I think uh, a lot of people, that was probably the kind of towns they were, right? It was every man for himself, get as much money as you can, and then bail out with trying to get rich. But they're still going on today, and I don't know how big, because like I said, major corporations. You see these TV shows, but they're probably fake. Um, about people looking for gold, like in Alaska or whatever it may be. Definitely not as big as it was, but um, it's just crazy to think that there's these towns that have been abandoned, just like that. This is another one. This was actually um, a coal burning factory, where they used to use water to cool down and generate coal. And now, like, there's these big, think of a nuclear power plant, where you have these big stacks, and they were creating these things to create coal and or nuclear reactors. They look the very same to this, where they just abandon them, and just kind of like a mall. Like, you think you look at like an island with nuclear reactors and where they're heating and cooling, and you see kind of like the puffs of smoke coming out the air. They're in production. And then imagine that place like failing or being abandoned. And you just have these big mega structures that you can't really, like, how are you going to tear that all down? Well, first of all, nuclear, you really can't tear down because how, like radiation, and it's really never going to leave that place. Like, how can you tear it down? It's just going to get worse and worse over time. But these places are random. People still go there. Like these people that take these urban photos, they go to these power plants and there's still radiation. You think about Chernobyl, that was the meltdown though, so that's worse. But they have these stacks and things that you really can't go and just tear it down. And even if you did, it would kind of like be blowing up like a building and having it collapse on itself. But there's a ton of them, and um, I think if you watched on Netflix, there is a place called 3 Mile Island. And it was a city. It was a pretty big city built around this little island that had a nuclear power plant, and it started to fail, and they had a nuclear meltdown, and there's some corruption behind it. I won't get into it, but they were feeding the people kind of like incorrect information as the radiation grew, and like people were like scrambling to get out of town. They were telling them they didn't have to worry. I think to this day, obviously because it was the meltdown, like the town is completely abandoned. I think it's 3 episodes. But you think of that, and it's actually there's quite a few of them that have done that. But people kind of like live around these areas because that's what provides them their power, and a vast majority of power, I guess, throughout certain areas. But
Yeah,
um,
power and jobs too, right? I mean,
yeah,
a lot of folks are there purely because that's where they need to be to work.
right. And if those go down, it's a ghost town. Like, you think about, I always go back to Chernobyl because that's the one I always think of in Russia. Like you see all these pictures, and it's gonna be uninhabitable for forever, not at least in our lifetime. And cities, towns, like you can see like houses completely filled up with personal belongings because they just had to go, right?
Yeah.
And did people still go in? I don't know, but Chernobyl, I'm pretty sure you just die if you go in if you don't have the right equipment. But people still go into some of these ones that were taken down, and they still visit, take pictures, and I'm pretty sure they're blocked off for safety reasons, but they still do it.
And people will still go into Chernobyl. I just know that like, you only go so far, right? Like you can visit the town. You can do the outskirts, and I don't think any of it's legal, right? And we're all talking people who just do it. But right, have you seen the photo too of, not to go too far off topic, but the photo of the meltdown? There's only, right, like one photo in existence of like, then they call it like the elephant's foot, the actual like center of the radiation.
Oh no, I've never seen that.
You'll have to Google it, see if you can pull it up. But it's like I think it's I want to say it was called the elephant's foot, and it's like there's only one photo in existence, and it was like maybe I make up a lot of stuff. I'm not sure, but I feel like it was taken with a mirror, right? Because like the radiation would instantly destroy the film, right? There, I didn't make it up. Yeah, that thing. Do that one or the black and white one. I think the black and white one's the original. But that's like the thing, right? That's the that's the core right there, the center of it. Isn't that
That
wild?
was the actual core.
Yeah, that's from what I understand, that's like the source of the radiation, right? Like obviously the meltdown was big, right? And I think there was a lot of fire and explosions and stuff like that, but that stuff right there is like in the center of the room.
Oh Jesus. Oh man. Yeah, those are definitely some crazy places. I would never visit them out of sheer
No way.
being scared of getting radiation poisoning. But uh, that that's just crazy to me. Here's another one. I think these places are interesting because people still live in them. But here's the town in China. It was pretty big. Um, People ended up having to evacuate this town. I don't remember if it was from flooding or because of landslides, but so you have this huge town of like tens of thousands of people. You see housing, you see the development. This is a small picture of it. This would actually be pretty cool to go visit. I think they do allow tourism in this place. This was actually on the island, and all these people evacuated the island. And when it became safe, there's still like a population of like 15 on this island. Despite all of these empty buildings, there's 15 people or so living on this island, or maybe less. Um, and of course, they have to boat in their food, their groceries. I don't necessarily know what power looks like, but there's actually quite a few of these. I watched a documentary on them, of these towns and places where people choose to live. They don't have cars, like they have ATVs. Um, maybe generators. Maybe they like the seclusion, but they're completely now abandoned. Some of these buildings, like again, like are filled with belongings that people just left and bailed out. But you still
And it looks
have
like
those.
too to answer your question, it looks like this particular town was abandoned because it looks like people left in mass due to problems with education and food delivery. So just getting a solid education and getting food to eat.
Yeah, well, you would figure that would be any island, that has like, I don't know, like any island that has, like a built-in town system into it. Even if you had a grocery store, um, how would you fill it,
Exactly.
right?
And they
And
were a
then
fishing village, so I would imagine they ate a lot of fish and probably not much else.
right, and what's the fish diet called? I don't know what it's called.
Pescatarian.
Pescatarian. Yeah, maybe they're
Yep.
pescatarian. You had to be one to live on this island.
Yeah.
But there are other islands that are out there that are the same. You really have to think about. I mean, I guess you don't have a car, you have a boat, and it's to go get food, and
Yep.
that's crazy that you'd have to. You think about it, like you boat out, you get your food. When you boat to the mainland, I guess you can call it. Uh, then you have to walk to wherever you get your food, load up the boat with your food and supplies, take it back, and then walk it. Or I don't know if you have a car in town or in a car or ATV, but I don't even. When I would live in an apartment, I didn't even like carry like groceries up the stairs.
Yeah. Do you think Amazon delivers to this place?
Yeah, if when they come out with drones, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's just crazy to see places like this that have been abandoned. Like, I, to me, like despite the challenge of getting food, like I think, like I'm the type of like I'm from Michigan, so like houses are like 40 feet between each other. Like they weren't stacked like now, like in Arizona, like I could probably put my hand over the fence and I could probably touch the house next to me, right? Whereas in like places like this that are a little bit more secluded, I mean, maybe a little more antisocial, but um, kind of having that seclusion, personal space, to me, it seems a little bit more appealing to me.
You ever think about? I wonder if there's a correlation between the the closeness in proximity of homes to the sense of community that a neighborhood might have. Because I almost feel like it'd be like an inverse correlation, right? Like like you said, we live in Arizona. I'm the same way, right? I can almost reach over and touch both houses at the same time. Um, and you almost wonder if like just feeling so overcrowded like that almost just makes you or makes you want to hide more, right? Makes you want to be more secluded, more closed off, right? Like, man, I see my neighbors every time I turn around because my window's facing theirs. I don't want to know what they're doing. I don't want anything to do with them. I don't want a sense of community, period, right? Whereas sometimes in these like these small towns, these old farm towns, abandoned or not, right? Like you might live miles away from each other, but you know all your neighbors. I wonder if there's a correlation there.
Yeah, it's kind of like now you would like on your street, right? You probably know most of the people on your street. But in these towns, probably know everybody in the town,
Yep.
right? And then and they're probably all friends, and they know that everybody hates Susie Q. um,
I would be Susie Q. It's me.
you would be Susie Q. Uh, this one I found really interesting. I had no idea about this. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's in China. You can probably look it up. They built a city to replicate France's capital. And it failed. It was ambitious and it failed. You can kind of see it in the picture. I'll make it a little bit bigger here. For viewers that are not seeing the actual picture, essentially what you see is what it looks exactly like Paris. They built this town in China to replicate Paris. It was kind of like supposed to be their tourist destination. They have like a miniature Eiffel Tower in the center of it. And they expect it to be a huge tourism attraction. And when you look in the picture, you see all these buildings that look like they would be, they look like they would have tons of people in these buildings. You see in the back, like a bunch of apartment buildings. But when you look at the picture closely, you can tell that all these buildings are abandoned. I think you see one person in the picture walking on the street. They used to have over 10,000 people living in this city when it first opened. And that's kind of hard to believe because you see all these apartments and stuff. It looks like it can fit more than 10,000 people, especially in China where it has a very big population. But there's still roughly, like 1,000 people living in this city. But the streets are always empty and there's nobody ever in them because of course when you think about 1,000 people in this big of a space, it's just completely and utterly like abandoned, and it's huge is the crazy part.
It's interesting too. In looking at the picture, it looks like all the landscaping is still like very well maintained, which I feel like is so that's so China, right? Like hey, we may not live here, but we're gonna make sure that it still looks beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the hope would be, like maybe there's a developer or somebody that took over this, or maybe it's the original. That maybe you can make it thrive again. I guess you could say maybe that's the point in keeping up. But you see the buildings and they run down, so really what you can do, maybe they're rebuilding one building at a time. Maybe that's that 1,000 people.
Or maybe it's just one guy that just really loves gardening, you
Yeah, he
know?
goes out there to keep his little city
Yeah,
looking good. I mean, it
yeah.
could possibly be the community that keeps it up.
That would
But
not be me.
yeah, but when I look at this specifically, and you see a replica, right? So personally, right, if I'm going to travel, okay, and I'm thinking the Eiffel Tower, right? Am I gonna go to China to see a replica
That's
of an
true.
Eiffel Tower? Like maybe if I'm already in China to visit, and I think it's pretty strict. I could be wrong. I know it was pre-COVID, but getting in, like there's a lot of stipulations. Um, but like if you're thinking of the experience of like France, like would you want to go to like this replica, or would you go to France?
It's like when mom says, "We have the Eiffel Tower at home."
You can look at it in a picture. It's all
Yeah.
the same. But you get like the French cuisines, you get like all these things. Wherein is it's kind of like in America, like where you can go to like these Italian places. You can, in Arizona, there's a lot of Hispanic food places, Chinese. But if you go to China, you go to Japan. It's very different. Like when I went to Japan, right? Like everybody thinks Japan sushi, right? I went to a sushi place there. There's no such thing as the sushi roll. That's not a thing. That's an Americanized version. It's very different to what it is here. Like very different, very very different. So you think here, you go there, it would be very China specific with maybe their modern takes on France. But I'd rather have the experience of going to France, and that's maybe why this failed miserably.
Yeah, I almost wonder if it was more, uh, like maybe Americans weren't the target audience, right? Because you're dead on, right? Like why would you go see the Great Value version when you can go see the real thing? Um, but maybe more domestic tourism, right? Like hey, I can't afford to leave China and go to Paris, but at least we can go over to Paris town and hang out.
I guess that's a good point. It's kind of like let's go to Disney World.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, doesn't Disney World? It's been years since I went, but don't they have different areas that represent different cultures in different parts of the world? Like kind of the same vibe, right?
um I think it depends on the Disney World, right? Like
And to be fair to this town, we do have an Eiffel Tower, don't we? Don't we in Vegas?
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Yeah. So
but
would I rather go to I'd rather go to Vegas than Paris,
but when you
right?
think Vegas, right? Like they have like the miniature one there and they have the hotel, right? But it's isolated. When
Yeah,
you
and it
go
really has nothing to do with Paris. It's all
right,
marketing.
right. You go to Vegas, you're in this area, you take a 10-minute walk, you're in another area, right? So it's like, cool, I've seen it. Let's move down the street to the Bellagio, like so there's a lot more to see. Like maybe if this was a small portion, maybe it would have worked out. But
See, at least when Arizona does this, we have the real thing, right? We have the London Bridge here, right?
oh, that's true. Yeah, we
Yeah,
do. Yeah,
but we have the actual thing. It's not a replica.
it's true. Oh, here's one. I love these. Let me see. Pulled it up. Why isn't it? Okay.
Why does that look like a piece of cheese?
This is actually a light. So there's a lot of these. I used to sneak into one when I was a kid. They have across America, and I'm sure there's other places because they used a lot of them, especially in um like earlier in like during the war and when there was a breakout in diseases and stuff like that. Asylums. There's a lot of them abandoned, and they used some of them they used when there's like a breakout and a deadly virus, and a lot of people were sick. And then there's some where there was like unsavory practices, like I don't know what the one is called, but like where they like something like taking like a hammer and a chisel to the head or the brain or to the I don't
Lobotomy.
the lobotomy, yeah. So like practices that are considered inhumane when these places close, but it was
Did you know
these
that John F. Kennedy has a sister who was lobotomized?
really
Yes, yes. Her dad had her lobotomized without even consulting his wife. Could you imagine? Can you
what
imagine like just waking up one day and lobotomizing your kid?
what. So I've never done research into it. I've seen it in a movie, but they don't really explain it. What was the purpose?
So lobotomies existed originally to cure all sorts of ailments, right? They would use them to fix things like hysteria or paranoia or bipolar or depression. Now, do they work? Clearly, no, right? There's a reason we don't do lobotomies today, and thank God, because I would have been lobotomized a long time ago. But for her case specifically, and I mean, again, I know general stuff. I make up the details. So this was decades ago, right? She had a history of mental illness. I think a history of like homelessness and behavioral issues. And I think at the end of the day, her dad was just a scummy human who said, "I can't afford to have a less than perfect child ruin the reputation of the wonderful Kennedy family. So I'm going to take care of it in the best way I know how, which was to lobotomize her and then basically just have her shut up for the rest of her
Oh man. Well, now we know why. uh,
life."
so because of that, right? They're across America. They have these big places, asylums, that house people with obviously mental disorders. They do lobotomies. They use these sites for people with diseases. Like I don't know, like maybe smallpox, something that happened during the First World War, Second World War. Um, but they're all abandoned throughout America, and it was funny. Like when I was a kid, there was this asylum in Michigan, and a lot of kids did it. But they had this huge area that had like a mixture of 20 buildings, and it was an asylum. And to prevent because they started building neighborhoods around the asylum, and to prevent people from having to see the patients, they had underground tunnels where they traveled the patients from one building to another, so they never saw the outside. People from around the neighborhoods never had to see them, and over time, like it deteriorated, it closed down, and it was considered haunted. Like that was the big draw to it, right? They had it closed off. They had security, but people like myself or other kids would jump the fences. They would find their way to the tunnels, right? And you'd have like little flashlights, and the tunnels sometimes were like half flooded. And you would go in the tunnels, and it was really creepy. You could barely see anything. You didn't know really where you were going or what building you'd end up in, if any. Um, and you would go through these tunnels, and you'd find a building, you go up into it, and all the equipment is still there, like the bedding, like the carts, like the tools, like everything was still there. And I think it's a draw. When you think asylum, you think crazy, you think haunted because terrible things happen there. Lots of people died, but a lot of them are closed now because when you really think about like an inpatient center for people that need help, they're not as big because they have, I think there's a requirement like doctor to patient ratio. So they're not as big as they once were, but most of these asylums, like the one you see in the picture, are closed, deteriorated, have asbestos, and they're just like they are creepy. Maybe not during the day, but at night, they're creepy. You can find them on like a lot of ghost hunter shows. They visit them, but it's just crazy to look at to see. Yeah, they used to lobotomize people at these places. They're very inhumane. It was almost like a jail. Like you see this like giant like light that looks like they're about to do surgery in the picture. That used to be over somebody in that bed, right?
Yeah, and you
So
got to hope that like the decline in use too has a lot to do with the standard of care we have now, right? Like you said, the doctor patient ratio and just the reality that like okay, we don't send everybody who we assume is a witch to an asylum anymore, right? Now we just send them to I don't know San Francisco.
yeah, San Francisco. No, but it's just crazy to think. They're definitely a draw. Most of them are close to the public. I don't think really any of them are allowed for tourism. I could be wrong, but mainly because when these places were built, because they're inhumane, um, they're closed and they're built in a time of asbestos, and things weren't up to code. So you really can't like visit and see these places. But luckily, they do let photographers inside so we can kind of get a glimpse of the past, I guess you could say. So asylums, man, crazy, creepy, but they're there. Let's see what our next one could be. Let's see. Okay, so here's one. You probably know of this. Nagasaki Island. A lot of people might know about this. Again, wasn't necessarily um, for nuclear reaction, but it was for a coal deposit. There is apartments all over the island. I'll make this a little bit bigger. But it was built around like the laborers, right? And um, it was really big. Like everybody that lived there worked in the coal mines, their family was there. I'll make this picture a little bit bigger. If it wants to make it bigger for me. Okay, so here we go. So you can see this big island, right? And they had a big coal deposit. You can see all these big buildings, these big apartments, these complexes of where people were there living there for the sole purpose of making a living. And eventually, the coal ran out, right? And we are talking earlier about, um, like kind of like gold mining, like the cities around gold mining, coal, maybe iron as well. I'm not really, I know coal's big. I don't know so much about iron, but They built this big town around it, and as soon as it ran out, island dead. Nobody's there anymore. But it is the shell in itself. It'll never go away. It's going to be something that people that live around there have to see on a daily basis. But it's crazy to see a town again built around one specific goal, and when that goal is done, it's abandoned. I think it's great. What do you think when you see this picture?
It reminds me a lot of like Alcatraz, right? And Alcatraz is probably another good example of a place because obviously it's not in operation anymore. But it does not look, even if you take away the fact that like it's so ruined, right? It does not look inviting. It does not look fun. It does not. And as we know, mining in general is a dangerous job, often very unsafe, definitely not glamorous, right? And you could tell. I mean, gosh, if you had to pick a profession for people who live on a place like this, you'd think, yeah, they're coal miners, that's for sure. That's terrifying.
Yeah, what was that? Yeah, I want. It was in our lifetime. I don't remember the age I was, but it's called like the 18 or the 21, where it was. I think it was a coal mine where like a bunch of people got trapped, and it was like a race to save them. It was all over the news. They're trying to
Oh
drill down
yeah.
like a breathing pipe and save these people. I think they were down there. Maybe I'm getting the 21 from. It was 21 days until they were able to get to them to save them. Maybe that's what the 21 was, or was the
Yeah,
survivors.
I want to say it was like in like South America or something, right?
I'm not 100% clear. I know it's on the news the whole entire time it was going by, like step by step, them putting down. I think you're looking it up.
I am.
But yeah, I remember them drilling down the tube for air and then dropping walkie talkies down there, and then yeah,
Could it have
it
been
was pretty.
33 men?
Yeah, 33 men. It was over the course of like was it 21 days? I
So
don't
it
know where I'm
says
getting
the
21.
2010 something mining incident. It was in Chile
Oh, okay, so it was Chile.
in in 2010. Yeah, it was. Gosh, it says 69 days. Nice.
Oh wow. Okay, so I was way off. How many people was it that were trapped? Did it say?
Uh, 33 people.
Yeah. So
33
imagine
men were
being.
trapped 700 meters underground, so 2,300 feet underground, and around 3 miles from the mine's entrance, and they were rescued after 69 days.
Can you imagine being in no lights, 69 days, only 30 survivors. The amount of work that went into rescuing these people. It was on the news all the time. I'm pretty sure there's a movie about it too. But it's just crazy to think because you're looking at this and this is a coal mining town. You look how packed it is. And you think about the safety of it. But like you said, it's a dangerous profession, but it has to be lucrative in some sense or form for what they get paid. Like, look up real quick what an average coal mine worker gets paid. Like, I wonder if the pay is even worth it, or if it's something you do because it it's a booming area around you and you just get it's money. I, I'm not sure.
So, average underground coal mining salary by state. I don't know what year this is, but it's got to be recent. For Arizona, it looks like for a lot of them around 44,000 a year. So really not that
Oh
lucrative, right? You're
man,
talking.
you think of the risk.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean it's got to be what it's got to be a little safer now, but still not a safe or glamorous job. And I think oftentimes, right, like it's hard, right? Because on the one hand, you think, well, gosh, nobody wants to do that. It must be fairly lucrative, but at the same time, uh, who are the types of people that are doing these jobs, right? It's people who need an effing job, right? It's people who may not have the skills or the training or the opportunities that some other folks have, right? And so it's like, well, damn, I guess I'm going to be a coal miner. And I know that sounds a little cliche, right? But it's kind of true, right? It's like we're not sending our doctors and lawyers down there to be coal miners.
Right, it's a job. Um, it's crazy to think because God, you take out a year. I don't know how much of a day they spend down there, and you're breathing in fumes. Um, so it's probably toxic for you, right, in your lungs.
Yeah, it says the
Um,
average across the United States is 51,000 a year.
wow.
But
Yeah,
in San Jose, California, they average 101,000.
of course. It's California.
Yeah, so they're swinging the average pretty far.
All right, so that's cool. Interesting. Learned some facts today. Um, let's see. Oh, this one it's in the United States, so I actually like this one. So you
Ooh.
maybe you've heard about this one. Maybe as soon as you saw the picture, you immediately thought of what it was. But so in New Orleans, they had a Six Flags. We know Six Flags. They're still throughout America. We still have them. But they had a massive flood in New Orleans. And I want to say like it was like 50 to 70% of um, the park was underwater. And I think it was for a week or two. And once it all cleared out, you think of like all the safety precautions, the electrical, like everything that goes into a park, whether it be like a wood ride, like attractions that were there, like food stalls. Um, After it was done being flooded, um, they literally kept it closed. So now in New Orleans, there's this big piece of land with roller coasters that are still up, buildings, attractions that you can see from. I don't know how close this is to building developments, but you just see this like deteriorating theme park. And you think of any theme park, they're pretty huge because of how many people visit them. But it's just completely 100% abandoned, like overgrown, like rust all over the stuff going around, maybe an eyesore, but they never took it down. They had no I don't know if it's because of flood risk, but they've never rebuilt or taken down or did anything with the plot of land.
It looks like, according to this article from 2023, um, the city of New Orleans committed $1 million towards the redevelopment of the site as a Six Flags, I believe. So I believe that they are, or at least were, trying to reopen it.
When was that published?
This was 2023.
Interesting. Yeah, because it's been down for a long time.
Yeah, what,
I don't know
12,
really how you go
13
about.
years?
It looks like it would definitely be more than what are you gonna do? Slap some paint on it and then reopen
Yeah,
the
I mean,
ride? I mean,
surely they've got to level it and start over, right?
right? And
I mean, even to be competitive, I don't know much about roller coasters, but I know that like they're always pushing the envelope in terms of ride development and making these attractions like world's first, world's biggest, one of a kind. So even if they were to reopen every ride, they'd be like, well, yeah, that's cool. That's technology from 10 years ago. We don't care about that anymore.
right, well, but I mean, just I would never go there. $1 million can't rebuild a park. Like a
No, no,
park takes
surely
millions and millions of dollars to build a park.
surely they are pledging $1 million towards it in the hopes that some developer will, scoop up the rest.
Yeah, but you'd have to level and just looking at the pictures, like those wooden rides, like hell no. Like, what are you gonna
Mm-mm.
refurbish this? Like it,
Yeah.
that $1 million. I think last time I was talking to you about like these game shows where they're like, oh, you won two
Hmm.
hundred thousand dollars. Cool, you can pay off like your two cars that
Yeah, there's your
you're
down
paying.
payment for a
Yeah,
house.
yeah. Like so you're thinking a million, like I mean, like, yeah, what are you gonna do? Like landscaping? Like that's probably the
Yeah.
$1 million of it. Like,
Yeah, exactly. It
so
is. I mean, literally, it is, right? I know, like, it's anecdotal, but our HOA spends like $250,000 a year on landscaping for our neighborhood, and we don't have that big of a neighborhood. It's insane.
so yeah, I don't know what $1 million is gonna do. Like I put maybe it's just to put up a big fence around it so nobody has to see it. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what it is. Just a really tall fence.
That's Six Flags. And you think about yeah, Six Flags is a big thing, and just to abandon it, I get it. It was flooded. It was probably a lot of damage. Maybe they didn't. If this was flooded, probably a large portion of the city houses. People take precedent, of course. Present. So yeah, maybe that was why. But I mean, I don't think there's any coming back from that,
It looks
especially
like
with
they are
$1 million.
actively rebuilding it. So somebody picked it up. Somebody fronted some money because June 2nd, 2024, so a month ago, there's an article. I can't read the whole article. It's behind a paywall, but they've got photos of the renovations happening. It's
Interesting.
crazy.
I still wouldn't go. Don't trust
Yeah, right.
it.
Yeah, they better clearly mark which ones are new and which ones are refurbished.
There was another one. Oh, the I'll
Yeah.
open up this one quickly. So can you look up the Island of Dolls for me real quick so we can
Yeah,
figure out
yeah.
where it is?
Island of the Dead Dolls. It's an island in Mexico City, Mexico.
Yeah. So every I think every Ghost Hunter show has covered this, but there's an island of like. Does it say how many dolls?
Let's see. Legend. Got to do a quick Wikipedia scroll.
You can read some of it off. Give us some facts.
Let's see. So, it is notable, of course, for the multitude of dolls of various styles and colors that can be found throughout the isle. Local legends surround the dolls and the island's reclusive former owner, Don Julian Santana Barrera, um, making it a popular destination for dark tourism, of course, which is ultimately what we're talking about. I guess he died in 2001, and his family opened the island to the public as a tourist attraction. It says, in addition to the hundreds of dolls, the grounds host 3 huts and a small museum with articles from local newspapers about both the island and the creek. So basically, this dude put up a bunch of dolls and then sent photos of it to newspapers, and then newspapers published it, and he took copies of the newspapers and turned the newspapers into a museum. If that's not, dude, if that's not an entrepreneur, I don't know what is. Holy cow! Anybody could do that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's really considered a great abandoned place, but it's a creepy abandoned place.
Yeah.
Just dolls everywhere. You see heads cut off. Like in this picture we're showing, you can kind of see just a gist, like a small portion of this island of hundreds of dolls. It's really creepy to look at, and like these ghost hunter shows, they're mostly fabricated, but like people feel like the eyes or the heads are following them. Of course, they go at night, and you you get it in your head that they do these things, so you probably subconsciously think it's happening.
Oh, here's
But
the legend, bro. Here it is right here.
yeah,
So
what's up?
Barrera, so the original owner Barrera is said to have either come across the body of a young girl floating in the canals or failed to save her from drowning. The next day, Barrera found a doll drifting down the canal. Believing it belonged to the girl, he hung the doll from a tree in her memory and as a talisman to ward off evil spirits. It is sometimes claimed that Barrera found a second doll in the canal the next day. It is speculated that after her death, the young girl's spirit haunted the island, and to appease her, Barrera began scouring the trash and trading produce from his garden in exchange for more dolls. Evidence of the girl's existence, of course, like you said, has yet to be reported. In 2001, Barrera's nephew came to the island to help his uncle as they fished in the canal. Barrera, who was 80 at the time, sang passionately, claiming that mermaids in the water were calling for him. The nephew left briefly, and upon his return, found Barrera lifeless, face down in the canal, in the same spot where the girl was said to have drowned.
I just got chills. Creepy.
Creepy, or the makings of a great, fictional
Urban
movie.
legend.
Yeah, straight to Netflix docuseries.
I think they have one, to be honest with you.
They probably do.
I don't know if it's on Netflix, but I feel like it's around on one of them. Oh, okay, here's one. So this was a resort. Let's see. So it was in Turkey. Oh no, it was in Cyprus. When the Turkey invasion happened in 1974, I think they abandoned this project. But it was this huge resort town that they built, and you would think that at one point it thrived, but it never actually ended up being anything. Like none of this was housed. They uh, when they were still building it, they had model cars in garages, in parking areas to kind of like show it off. But if you go there now, they still have the model cars. They still have like all the fake things to kind of like showcase the resort. But you see it like circling this whole beach. Like imagine Hawaii, like a whole beach line of these resorts just empty. And they
It's
did this. They
crazy.
just abandoned it. And think about we're talking about Six Flags and the amount of money it would take to rebuild it. Think about the amount of money whatever developer put into this for it just to be abandoned.
Yeah, it's insane. And that beach, I mean, obviously it depends on, geographical location, but that's beachfront. It's beautiful.
Right, and it just abandoned. I think it was because yeah, it was some type of invasion or something like that, and after it, I don't think they came back to it or they recovered or they went bankrupt. I'm not sure the true story, but just looking at it again, like you look at the islands, and there's just so much of this space and buildings just barren and a wasteland. And to think it was never came back to, especially when you put that much money into it, guess somebody wouldn't pick it up for it to be rebuilt and be this resort town that it was supposed to be. It would like be like abandoning Hawaii. Like I wonder, you know, this is I have a legitimate fear of like I won't live in Florida. Like I would never live in Hawaii. Like I would never live on an island. I like going to like these resorts that are like on the water in the ocean. Like because I have this mental fear of like a tsunami like coming in and just smacking and like within a matter of seconds just being gone. And like I wonder, like in Hawaii, if this sort of happened, like if it would ever recover or turn into something like this.
Yeah, you almost wonder sometimes what the settlers were thinking, right? Like, okay, why do we live in an area where it's 120 degrees in the summer, or why did they decide to put down roots where there's tornadoes every year, or where there's hurricanes or monsoons or floods? But I guess at the same time, like that's Earth.
But I have a legitimate fear, but I couldn't live somewhere thinking like, okay, like like a hurricane is like a likely chance of taking out my home and myself included. Like
Yeah,
maybe
yeah. If you've got to
tornadoes
go to
are
Home Depot and buy hurricane ties, then
yeah, like and
I'm
like
out.
they put the wood on their homes and like get
Yep.
out and hope when they come back it's there. Like I just to me living in a state with tornadoes doesn't seem as scary to me.
Oh,
I don't know
terrifying,
why, but like a
terrifying.
simple earthquake could trigger a mile high or a really big a tsunami or like I'm like I it's just I don't know why. It's just even in
Could
our
you
time, I
imagine,
think there
right?
was
Like,
three or four that did
could you
that.
imagine just walking along, right? Like in your covered wagons, right? You find a spot and you're like, oh, this seems nice, and then all of a sudden a tornado comes through and destroys half your town. And what do you think? You don't think we should probably move. You just think, oh, let's just put up a big old siren. That way, next time people will know it's coming.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I grew up in Michigan. Um, were you born in Michigan
I
or
was
not Michigan?
born.
Were you born in
I
Arizona?
was born here. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So my only tornado experience is I was visiting Indiana one time, and the sirens were going off, and we had a plan to hide in the bathtub.
Yeah.
That was as far as we got.
So when you live somewhere that has risk of tornado, I think in Michigan it was the first Saturday of every month. Um, you would hear the siren go off for like 10 minutes, and it was just a test. So like every month you'd be reminded like you could have a tornado here. Here's the test, like of how
Jeez.
loud it's gonna be. So I think when I lived there, Michigan isn't really big of having tornadoes, but it's still a threat there. Like it could happen. Like I had an uncle, I forget where he lived in Michigan, but a tornado did touch down, and he survived. They were in the bathroom, and everything. He didn't get hurt, but his roof was pulled off, and it was in his neighbor's house. So
Jeez.
yeah, like, so I guess it could really happen anywhere where there's like it's hot, like the cool, the hot, like mixing together. Like I don't know the whole scientific behind it, but
I
yeah,
mean, we almost have them here at times, right? I feel like in recent years I've seen on the news where it's like, oh, there's like that's the type of cloud that forms prior to a tornado, right? Or it'll start to spiral, but it won't touch down, or
no, we
things
just
like
get
that.
dust devils and
Yep.
dirt tornadoes
Yep.
and walls of dust.
Yes.
Not harmful, but
Annoying.
annoying. Yeah. Man, so that was one. I think this is kind of like you think of um zoos throughout the United States, and there's becoming more and more of them. And it's a bad picture to kind of represent it, but you think of real estate, you think of like special building and like architecture that goes behind building a zoo. Typically there's gigantic holes in the ground for safety and other things. And as we move into the new world, right, where these things are considered inhumane, laws are being created that we can't bring in like certain types of animals, because certain reasons, like you can't just transport a tiger over here, right? Or you can't just go steal a tiger from its natural habitat to bring it to a zoo. So you're seeing more and more of them close, and it's another thing that people sneak into, but they're becoming a dime a dozen. Like you think like if we're gonna go to a zoo, right? Like we have a Phoenix Zoo, but
Hmm.
it's like you're gonna go to the zoo in California, right? So that's the big one, right? So is there gonna be a zoo in Phoenix forever? I think more people go to the Phoenix Zoo for the Christmas lights that they put there than they
Yep.
do all year round.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, I remember as a kid the zoo being a pretty popular like field trip destination, a pretty popular spot for my mom to take me sometimes, and I don't think that's the case anymore. But I almost wonder too. Like I was sitting here trying to think. Can you think of any out of your home, outdoors type of industry that's doing well? Like really, right? Disneyland obviously is a huge one, right? That they just keep making money hand over fist year after year. Um, but like your amusement parks, your zoos, I can't think of anything that's like we're Amazon now. We're virtual reality now. We're looking at a screen now, right? Why go to a zoo when you can pull up videos of a zoo in 4K on your 85-inch TV, right? Like or visit a zoo in virtual reality. Like I can't think of any industries really that are not just going the way of them all.
It's funny that you said that. I've been wanting to take my kids to this place. It's in Phoenix. I have it saved on my phone, but I don't know the name. Where you go into this building, and it's very generically set up, but you put on augment reality glasses, and they have two different experiences. Well, I think one is like a fantasy wonderland, and one is like a wizard thing. But you go in there, and there's these different types of things through your AR goggles that you could interact with and see things going on, like animals, like fairies, like all different types of things. But it's a big building with augmented reality.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
air
And why
conditioned.
why would anybody, right? Like imagine like you could spend, millions of dollars developing a zoo, or you could, you know, buy this $400 Oculus headset and strap it to every 9-year-old's face, and there you go, you have a zoo.
And it's not inhumane.
Yeah, exactly. It's only inhumane to the new animals of the zoo, which are our 9-year-olds.
Oh yeah, speaking of Disney, I wonder if it's in here. No, it's not. There was a I don't know. See if you let me see. See if I can find it.
Was there an abandoned Disney resort?
Yeah. Uh.
Several projects apparently. There was a River Country. It's the first water park at the Walt Disney Resort. The 3 children died there. Okay. Walt Disney World's Discovery Island was left to rot in 1999 and has been untouched since. Discovery Island in Bay Lake.
Yeah, there was like, yeah, there was this entire island. There was a specific Disneyland or world that was supposed to be being created, that was abandoned. I don't know how far in development it was, but Disney, you think the amount of money they have, why it would be abandoned. Maybe its location, maybe they were marketing it and it wasn't getting the traction that they felt it deserved. So they didn't think that they would make money on it, but they completely abandoned it. And you know, we have like Disneyland, Japan.
Right.
Do they have one in, what is it, like Paris or
Yeah,
England? Yeah,
Paris it
Paris.
is, right?
Yeah, they
So
have the
this
one
place
in
was called,
America.
it was originally called Treasure Island when it opened in 1974 as a bird sanctuary. It can only be accessed by boat or by a Walt Disney World cruise. Um, they rebranded as Discovery Island in 1978. They featured a range of exotic animals, an aviary, flamingo pool, and a beach for tourists. But it closed in 1999, and the reasons it closed included a fear of wild roaming alligators,
Oh boy.
accusations of staff mishandling the birds, and deadly bacteria found in the park's waters.
Oh God. Wouldn't it, wouldn't you do your research before you started building?
Surely, at some point during the construction, they realized that, hey, there's kind of a lot of alligators here. What's going on? Or
but
maybe the birds brought the alligators.
but it, when you go to develop something, maybe where it was located, maybe that, yeah, that could be a reason. But in the United States, I'm sure there is, like, I'm almost positive, like, culture samples have to be taken, wildlife is taken into consideration. You know, like they do testing on like chemicals in the ground, the water, like keeping it safe for an attraction or for people to even visit. Um, I guess I can say that, but it still happens.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think, right? But and we're also talking, opened in 1974, so we're also talking a bit, what's that, 50 years now. So, um, maybe if it were in development today, they would have done their due diligence a little better. It was located at Walt Disney World in Florida, so I don't know if it's adjacent to or within the park. I don't know, but yeah, Treasure Island.
So there's another one. Trying to see if I can find it. I cannot.
It was another Disney one.
It wasn't Disney. But I can't remember what it was exactly. Here, we'll move on to, we'll do two more. So this is another example of this was a diamond, a diamond mining site.
Is that a photo? That looks like a painting.
It's a photo. It's just
Holy
it's a
cow.
good photo.
Yeah, it looks like a painting.
There was this town, again, like we're talking about like coal and stuff like that, and gold. And so there's this town, this town was in, what was it? Namibia?
Yeah, Namibia.
Namibia, yeah. It's currently a ghost town. And it was built in an area where, I don't know, like kind of like Arizona, where they were digging for gold. They were getting like the gold rush. Then it stopped. And they had all these buildings, but it was in an area where there a lot of dust blows around, like, so yeah, it's been abandoned. Now you go and look at these buildings, like half of it's filled with sand. It's all torn down and weathered, and sand's everywhere. But it's another prime example of people putting time and money into something around the specific goal, and then once that goal is met or dries up, people just abandon it. And it's not repurposed, it's not taken down. It's just left out there. It's kind of like when you look on the side of the road and there's like bags and like pollution. It's just like I know like a building may not necessarily be polluting, but there's these places that are just left there. I like you could take it down for natural growth or ecosystem, but they're just left. They're
Yeah, it
just
sounds
left
like
behind.
the diamonds slowly started to deplete, right? They were finding less and less. And then in 1928, they found the richest diamond-bearing deposits ever known, only 170 miles south of this location. And so at that point, a ton of people just said, "Well, screw this, I'm going there instead." And the town was never the same.
It's just crazy to me that there's these booms and then people just fall off. They just go
Yeah,
away. It's crazy.
yeah, and I
Um,
think through history, I think a lot of it's like that. You ever stop and wonder, like, uh, what existed where your house is before your house was there? Like, go back 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years. Like, what existed in that spot? Probably many things, right? That came and went. It's kind
it's
of
true.
crazy.
Um, here's a good one. Because we have this in Arizona. I don't know which lake it is. So this one is in Italy. Um, the electric company essentially built a dam, and they had several villages and towns. And what they did was they essentially, I would hope, at least they did in Arizona. They bought out all these people homes, and they built a dam and flooded the area instead of taking out and taking all the homes out. They they build the dam and then they flood the entire area. So this one in Italy, this just shows the bell tower because it's the only thing still sticking up. But there was multiple villages and towns, and this has happened throughout the U.S. and this is in Italy, so obviously it's happened elsewhere. But they build a dam, they flood the area, they don't take down the towns. So if you go snorkeling or diving, I might have read that people do in this area. Um, you go down, you go in Arizona, you still see the structures in the water. They just decided to flood it instead of doing anything with what was there. And this, you can still see the chapel or the bell tower out of the water, but they just completely abandoned the town and just flooded it.
It looks like in 2021 they actually drained it too, temporarily to do some maintenance or some repair work on the dam. And so there's some photos of it drained, which is kind of crazy.
Does it show the
This article doesn't really have a whole lot of photos. They have a photo of the bell tower, but like taller, right? It just looks taller because there's more of it revealed. But you're right, stuff like that happens all the time, right? I mean, you got to figure every dam that was built is now flooding an area that, prior to the dam being there was not flooded, and many times, right, these rivers are sources of water and food, and it's very common for people to live near rivers, right? And you hear about these, you see, I've seen videos on YouTube of people scuba diving in these places, and it's crazy.
Yeah, it's just great thing that there's at least one in our state.
Hmm.
I don't remember if it was Pleasant or Canyon. It was one of them. But here in Arizona, all our lakes obviously are man-made. Um,
Yep.
so we don't really have like any real one. And then um, fish is funny. I, I don't think you're a fisher or you go fishing that often. You may.
Every once in a while, but no, I would not consider myself a fisherman.
So I had a boat in Arizona, funny enough, and sometimes we have a lake called Soror Lake. You can't launch your boat because the water level, like the water coming in, sometimes in the heat and what they have to release in the dam the water level is too low for you to actually launch a boat or to fish, and you can see how far the water line comes down because of the drought or what the dam is releasing at a certain time of the year. And a good example for that would be, um, you know how we have the tubing here in Arizona? You go on the tube, you
Yeah.
float down the water for like just
Yep.
miles and miles for no reason. But it's they open the dam, and that allows you to do that for an attraction. And when
Right.
they close the dam, and it's closed for the winter, is where people go fly fishing there. But
Mhm.
you obviously can't be on your tubes because the dam isn't open. And sometimes during the summer, depending on our drought and how our water situation is, it's closed off, and even the tubing where people will get drunk and float down this river for no reason and just get sunburned. I don't know why it's an attraction. But
If you have to ask, then you'll never know,
yeah,
I'm guessing.
exactly. But it's a thing, and I get it. Dams are, um, yeah, I'd rather have a dam for electricity around my area than a nuclear power plant.
True.
um,
Yeah, it looks
so
like the town of Alamo Crossing, I don't know if that's one you were talking about, Alamo Crossing, Arizona, established in the early 1800s. Uh, Very small. It had a post office and a few shops. It was eventually abandoned. And in 1968, they built a dam and they filled Lake Alamo and flooded the entire city. Or
that was one of them. There was a second.
It's
Um,
wild.
but it's crazy just to think that they do that. But I mean, if they bought the people out and just didn't tell them to get out, we're flooding the area, like, and they gave them like the value of their home, cool. But they just pushed them out, so we're flooding this area. That's terrible. But it's
Yeah, stay
but
or go, but this time next week.
yeah, but they build a humongous dam. You think about the money they put into it, but they don't put any money into leveling the town and clearing out the debris. They just flood it. It's
Yeah, they
gone.
figure why not? Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, we're paying for the dam. Forget about, like, taking care of the rest.
I'm surprised this one in Italy they didn't at least take down the church steeple. Like I'm glad they didn't. It looks awesome, but I'm surprised they didn't at least level that. You know.
It's just crazy. But I mean, for the sake of time, there are so many abandoned places in America, across the world, that I, I really, you can check them out. Like, this website that I went to is called cntraveler.com. They have like 45 different ones. I mean, obviously, if we stopped and covered each one, this could be like a 4-hour show. But it's just crazy to think of all these abandoned places, and like, I can think of what Pompeii, where they had like that volcano, that big volcano, and destroyed like this humongous like city development, whatever. There's so many places that have been abandoned, some due to natural disasters, to some due to popularity, like the malls, some due to just like it could just be some due to like the fishing village, like they don't want to be there. Gold mines have closed down, so these places have abandoned. But as times go on, times change. Yeah, malls close. Gold mining is a different type of operation now because we have heavy machinery. So it's really not towns; they just drive their heavy machinery there with a plot of land, some porta potties, and an RV, right? So all these places are starting to be abandoned. We're seeing more and more of them. I mean, I really, in my personal opinion, would like to see the buildings taken down. I mean, sometimes it's beautiful to kind of see like the growth retaking, but I would love for them to be taken down so natural, uh, like our natural environment can take back to the area rather than just leaving a bunch of buildings there, just saying screw it. But yeah, it's just crazy seeing it throughout the world and more. And some of the big places too, like that mini Paris in China, it's so big. Just to abandon it, it's crazy. It's crazy thought to me.
See, I think I'm the opposite school of thought. I think leave them the way they are. I think that in the grand scheme of things, right, we're millions and millions of years old. Let nature take it back at its pace, and we get to enjoy what that looks like in the meantime, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
Um,
I can
before
see
we're
it.
done, what one place, if you had to pick one abandoned place to visit, where would you go? It's a
Gosh,
tough one, huh?
um,
Here, I'll let you think. I would probably do gosh, I want to say maybe the Island of the Dolls, right? I think that's pretty cool. Um, I almost just want to say Fiesta Mall, right? Our local mall. I think there's something to be said for going to a spot that I went growing up, and seeing it. I think it's actually leveled now. I think it's fully gone, but visiting a place that you went to as a kid and seeing it in a different light would be cool.
I mean, I think for me, it'd probably be one of those villages on islands that have been taken over by growth and that has a very small population. And the reason being is because you go there and you kind of see like like first of all you see the ecosystem. Like the islands are beautiful to begin with. You see these buildings that are being retaken over, which kind of reminds you of some movies like I Am Legend, where you're in New York and growth is starting to take back over.
Hmm.
Um, but then you got those 15 people there, and I'm sure they don't like to be bugged, right? But there may be that one person there that kind of walks you through how long they've been there, what it was, and um, how it thrived, and then how it declined, and what it is today. To me, that would be really cool for the story, and then
Totally.
hearing why they um, continue to live there despite it being 15. I mean, I think I can think of a reason why I would stay, but just getting their perspective on of their time of being there through the entire process of it being retaken by nature.
Totally.
Um,
Totally. I respect that. It's a good answer.
so cool. Well, so thank you for joining our show. For people that are rewatching, thank you for watching our show. You can find us on Twitter at Empty World PC. Obviously, if you're watching a video, you can find us at Empty World PC on YouTube, and we'll also be putting our casts on multiple platforms for you to listen to if you don't have time to watch the videos. But each week we'll come back with a different topic. The last week we kind of covered um, like the mental society and how we feel empty in the world of our mental space. Today I thought this was very fun covering abandoned places, the empty world. Next week we'll have a new topic. Every week we'll try to keep it
Yeah,
fresh.
you wanna sneak peek?
Yeah, what do we
I think I'm gonna try to put. We're gonna go back into the mental space a little bit. I'm gonna try to put together an episode on the Call of the Void.
got it? Awesome, cool. Well, and then the week after I'll try to nap space because I find it very interesting.
There we go.
But yeah, today was abandoned places. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching our video. If you liked our content, please subscribe. We would love to hear from you in the comments what you would like to see talked about in our empty world, whether it be places, any range of topics between mental health, voids, space, black holes. I don't care if it's empty, if it's a void. We want to talk to it, but talk about it. We want to hear from you. And again, I'm just second episode in, very excited to continue to grow. Hear your comments and hopefully talk about subjects that you want us to talk about, and hopefully have guest stars on our show in the future. Ty, anything to add?
No, man, you summed it up. I'm super excited. Next week's gonna be a real doozy. So wear your big boy pants, and it's gonna be fun.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining Empty World Abandoned Places this week. We will see you next week on Monday at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time or 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you for joining the show, and we'll see you next week.